So here we are back in the game room, and I finally got around to making a video that I kind of threatened to make for the past year or so. It's the Taito F3, and in my book this is a really underrated system. Everyone collects Neo Geo and all the rest of it, but the F3, it's a bit of a 2D powerhouse as well, and it's really from the sort of golden age in the arcade, so that's sort of early to mid 90s. So some amazing games, and not all of them actually got ported to consoles, so there's some games you probably want to check out. I actually picked up a couple of new games for the system, so I was thinking I ain't got time to do a pickups video for it, so it's the perfect time really to do a collection video. Let's have a look at all the games I've got, and let's pick up some of my favourites and do like a top 10 and top 5. You know the score. We're going to look at the system very quickly, try not to bore you. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I will try and give you a few tricks and tips if you're thinking of collecting these big red cards yourself. So what exactly is the F3? Well, it's Taito's sort of cartridge system, similar to what Neo Geo did. Of course, it's the upgrade from the F2, which actually did allow you to change the games, but it was really poorly designed. They were very flimsy PCBs, and even the jammer edge was actually on the game rather than the motherboard. Just to put things in a little bit of perspective, I like to sort of compare to the actual consoles of the time. So the F2 was kind of like the Mega Drive in many ways, so most of the games were ported to the Mega Drive or things like the PC Engine actually. While the F3, most stuff actually ended up on the Saturn because of its 2D capabilities. There were a couple that did end up on the PlayStation 1, but really Taito's sort of relationship with PlayStation really picked up a little bit later, like 98, because then most of their hardware were based on the PlayStation 1. So something like the G-Net that came after this, that was basically a glorified PlayStation 1. Okay, you ready for tip number 1? Well, if you're thinking about picking up these games, be aware there are different regions. So this is a blue kit here, it means it's from the US. Now, luckily the games weren't actually region locked by software, they did it by physical means, so meaning the actual cartridge slot, they put little grooves in, and they just change it around depending on the regions. Similar to what Nintendo did with the Nintendo 64, they just physically stopped you from having different regions. Sorry for the show and tell, but I wanted to just quickly show you the different motherboards I've got. I've got obviously the Japan, Asia and North America. I don't have a European, so I'm not sure where the slots are on that. But don't worry, what you can do is you can go online and you can actually make it region free. So here's one I did earlier. So you can see the grooves have been taken away, so you can just put any region in there you like. As you can see, this North American game can go quite nicely now to the Japanese motherboard, and don't worry about putting the games on. I've never had any issues, unlike the Jellicoe Mega 32 where I ding some of the pins. Goes on quite nicely. And if you need a kick harness, tip number 2, don't use the one there, use the CPS1 to CPS2 connector. It's fully compatible, it's the same connection. For you mega collectors out there that like your arcade full kits and stuff, you do find them. I've got 2 of them, so I've got a pink one which is Asian, and the blue one you saw before, obviously that was North American. Not something I know too much about. I believe the green boxes are from Japan. I have no idea for Europe what colour they had. They do contain the normal sort of gubbins you would expect. You've got your nice little artwork with the license on there. You've got the PCB sort of instruction manual, but also you've got this very, very cool little marquees, very similar to what you had on the Neo Geo. As everyone knows, SNK had the infamous Big Red in the States, but Taito had the Cybercore. Now this is a cabinet I've never seen. I don't know how common it was. Looks pretty cool. I've only seen the flyers. So let me know in the comments if this was actually a common cab in the States. Also, is there one in the arcade club? I'd love to know. But luckily I did get one of these marquees that came with the kit. So as you can see, it's got the little window there, so you can put your little mini marquees in there to display your game. And talking about games, let's put these dusty motherboards away and get to the good stuff. Those motherboards are really dusty actually, I apologise. I need to do something about that. I'm not a complete madman, so I don't have every single game on the system, but I pretty much have the good ones, and the ones that really would make my top 10 anyway. But what I'll do is I'm going to give you a little bit of footage so you can see all the games I'm missing that won't make it into my ranking. While you have a quick butchers at the games that won't make it into the list, I will quickly do the ranking disclaimer, because believe me, it's really tricky to do this. So I've got 17 games in total. What I'm going to do is tell you the 7 games that won't make it into the top 10. So we'll go through one by one in no particular order. Then in the top 10, I'm going to go through the games that didn't make it into the top 5 in no particular order. But then, as I mentioned in the thumbnail, it's my top 5. I will rank those. And for me, there is an absolute clear winner. But the other games in the top 5, it's a tough call, and depending on how I feel, it could change at any time. So there's a disclaimer anyway. In this little montage, I was included the prototypes like Twin Kicks and also Recall Horn. These didn't actually have a physical release, but the ROMs are available, so you can obviously use emulation if you like, or if you want to use actual hardware, you can use the Darksoft multi, which leads me nicely into tip number 3, which is get the Darksoft multi. The only reason why I don't actually have the Darksoft multi is the fact that I already had most of these games before it came out. So I didn't really see the need, and I only needed a couple of games that really meant something to me. But if I was starting again, I would have gone down the Darksoft route every time. In fact, the more I've been doing this video, I kind of talked myself into tip number 3. I'm thinking, you know, just to play these prototypes and stuff like Lightbringer, maybe I do need the multi after all. Okay, let's kick things right off with Landmaker. Now, you probably noticed I've got a full kit of this game, and you probably also noticed that it was rather clean. Yes, it was completely unused. Now, that is not a good sign for an arcade game. It's actually one of the later games in the life of the F3, so it came out in '98, and it didn't get released in North America, only in Japan and Asia, and obviously it wasn't too popular there either, because if you get full kits, yeah, it's probably not very popular. This, of course, is a puzzle game, and Taito do make some amazing puzzle games, but in my books, this is not one of them. So it's kind of like a reverse Puyo Puyo, where you slide up the little tiles to form these sort of buildings, like little forts, and then bigger ones like palaces. Kind of a strange concept, and once you destroy these buildings, they sort of push down the land on your opponent's side. Now, rather than firing tiles across or something exciting, yeah, it's pretty bland and pretty uninspiring, to be honest with you. It's quite possible there's more depth to the game that I'm aware of and some sort of fun enlightenment to have, but I'm just not prepared at this stage of my life to go through the pain barrier to find out. I just want to play some fun games. Maybe I'll give it another go at one point. If you're desperate to play this game, you can play it on the PlayStation 1, and I believe in North America it was called Build a Block or something like that. Next we have Arkanoid Returns. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer on this one, there are reasons for it to be excluded from the top 10. I do love this series. I used to play a lot of Arkanoid Revenge of Do on the Amiga, but that had a mouse, so it plays really, really well. Unfortunately, I don't have any spinners on my arcade machine, so you're stuck with using the joystick. There is settings you can change, but unfortunately for this particular game, it just isn't configured properly. It just feels too clunky and unresponsive. I'd love to get a pair of spinners for this game, because the 2-player co-op action looks pretty damn fun, especially if you've got some friends around, have a few beers or something. It does look like a good time, but unfortunately, yeah, spinners tend to be quite expensive these days. As much as I love the series, I can't possibly put it in my top 10 without playing it with an actual spinner, as the devs intended. This was another one late in the life of the F3 and also ended up on the PlayStation 1. Another game that didn't quite make it to the top 10 was Puzzle Bobble 3. Now, you're probably aware there's actually quite a few Puzzle Bobble games on this system. There's actually 4, and the ones I don't have was Puzzle Bobble 2 and 2X. Never really felt the need to pick them up because I already had 2 on the Neo Geo. This one, along with the original Puzzle Bobble, do get played quite a bit in my household. My kids love the series and very competitive, but I can't tell you the fine details between each version, certainly for the gameplay. All I notice is the themes, that sort of wins me over, and for me, this one has the best theme in all the series. Of course, it's charming and colourful as always, but it's just the arcade theme wins me over every time. Any game with Negret 2 in, of course it's going to win for me. This one also got ported to both the Saturn and the PlayStation. If 3 didn't make it to the top 10, well, Puzzle Bobble 4 certainly wouldn't make it. Don't worry, they've all been done now, no more Puzzle Bobble after this. Okay, not too much to say about this one really. I'm not a professional Puzzle Bobble player, so I can't tell you the ins and outs of this. I don't know the fine details between the games. All I know is it plays like Puzzle Bobble, so I'm fairly happy with that. So I discriminate more on the actual theme of the game. I don't particularly like this one. Yes, it's bright and colourful, but I just feel they've gone a little bit too far with some of the characters. They're a little bit weird and bizarre. I mean, come on, is that a Jar Jar Binks lookalike? I mean, what's going on? Ports galore for this one. You've got the Dreamcast version, PlayStation 1, Game Boy and Pico. It pains me to say, but none of the footy games made it into the top 10. I do love my arcade footy games, and Hat-Trick Hero is one of the better series too. There's quite a few of them on the actual F3. You had the 93, 94, and of course the one I've got here, which is 95, probably the best one. There's also another footy game, I believe it was called Super Cup Final League, but I don't think it's as good as Hat-Trick Hero. If you're like me and you're drawn to the footy games in the arcades in the early 90s, then you definitely would have played Hat-Trick Hero at some point. They all tended to look very similar, but the thing that always sticks in my mind is the selection of your sort of superstar or your ace player. I used to always select the striker. As expected, there's no licensing, so you've got your standard international teams. And the gameplay, again, it's arcade, so you know what to expect. You've got your very satisfying sliding tackles, you got your outrageous flamboyant overhead kicks, you got your normal shot, you got your lob, your little simple pass. Yeah, you know how it works. Get it to your ace, shoot, get a rebound. The Saturn got a cheeky little port called Hat-Trick Hero S. Another game that doesn't quite make it into the top 10 is Pop and Pop. Now we're into the good puzzle games now. This is exactly what Taito do so well. Addictive, simple puzzle games that are bright and colourful, containing some of your favourite characters as well from some amazing past arcade games. The roster includes the Two Little Dudes from Rainbow Island, even the Kiwis from New Zealand Story, Kiki Kaika, who you're going to see a few times today, and even the two Lumberjacks, Bomb and Jim from Don Doku Dom, which is a pretty cool arcade game in the F2 and got a really nice port on the PC Engine. I think there might be a sequel on the NES as well, but a Japanese exclusive. Very simple concept, think Puyo Puyo but with balloons. You've got a pair of balloons which you kind of rotate left or right. You either send them up in a row or you send them up directly as a sort of column. 3 of a kind and they pop, and that's pretty much it. Other balloons as well that exist that sort of add misery to your life and do you damage or cause disruption in your balloon popping fun. But generally it's a very simple game, ideal for kids or big kids as well. Even though it didn't make it into my top 10, I definitely recommend you give this one a go, especially if you like your puzzle games. So if you can't find it in the arcades, go and look out for it on the consoles, it's probably quite cheap. I know it did come out on the PlayStation 1. I think also there was a Game Boy sort of version. Next up is one of my new additions. It is Invader, or what we got in the West, Space Invaders 95, the Attack of the Lunar Loonies. This is definitely Taito's parodious moment, taking an absolute classic with Space Invaders, not changing the gameplay too much, but at the same time completely mixing it up, changing the graphics, making it fun and colourful, and not taking itself too seriously. Never really been a big fan of any of these remixes for Space Invaders. Taito did release a bit too many of them. They did milk this title, but this one's a little bit special. This one is a bit of an exception. I really feel the gameplay is actually benefited by some of the subtle changes they've added, like the super shot or power shot. Hold down your button and you'll let go of a powerful bomb that will take out multiple enemies. Don't forget to take out those UFOs at the top. It's not just about points anymore, because occasionally now they will actually drop some really useful upgrades. And the biggest change, and probably the best one, has got to be the boss battles. The icing on the cake has to be the inclusion of some special classic characters such as Kiki Kai Kai. Yep, I told you she'd make another appearance. And even the Silverhawk, which I guarantee you will make another appearance in this video. It did end up on one of those PS2 Taito Legend collections, so I urge you to check it out. Okay, top 10 time. We're going to start with Puchicarat. Wondered what the love child of Puzzle Bobble and Arkanoid would look like? Well, look no further, you've got it, it's Puchicarat. This is another game on the system that natively uses a spinner, so very similar to Arkanoid, you can actually go into the settings and change the configuration, so it will allow you to use a joystick, but unlike Arkanoid this time, it actually works quite well. It seems to be calibrated and seems to be responsive, and it's really enjoyable to use the joystick. I've got no complaints. I've added these sort of details how you can change the settings up above there. Got to tell, this game is fast and addictive. It's got the same sort of tactical element to Puzzle Bobble, where you want to be having chains of gems dropping down on your opponent's side, but at the same time you don't have the luxury to do a straight shot. You've got to use your reflexes, to use your paddle to bounce a ball up. It's a really good sign of a versus puzzle game when it has a nice risk and reward element to it, and this one does. So if you miss the ball, it hits the floor, well, you'll get an extra row of gems. And there's times where you want that because you want more gems so you can sling them across to your opponent. But there's time where you definitely don't want them. For later puzzle games, you got to check this one out. Came out on the PlayStation 1 and also the Game Boy Color. Next up is the only fighting game on the system. It is Global Champion, or Kaiser Knuckle as it was known in Japan. So you got a 6-button fighting game with characters coming from all around the world with unique stereotypes and fighting skills to duke it out, to defeat a mysterious general. I wonder where they got the inspiration for this one from. Okay, can't really blame Taito for trying to get in on all that Street Fighter 2 money. I mean, come on, they all did it. All the arcade publishers, they all had a fighting game. But this one was a little bit late to the game. It came out in '94, while the original Street Fighter 2 graced arcades around '91. Don't let the first impressions fool you. This is no Fight Fever on the Neo Geo. This is a pretty damn good game in its own right. It's got the basic ingredients of a really good fighter. You've got some beautiful graphics in there, detailed backgrounds, interesting characters, and of course it's Taito, so you've got some pretty damn good music too. As mentioned before, it is a 6-button fighter, so you've got your standard 3 buttons for punch and 3 buttons for kick, normal thing, low, high and medium. As expected, each character has its array of special moves, but what makes this game a little bit more interesting is the fact you've got this power gauge, which slowly fills as you get smacked around, and once full, you've got access to a desperation move. So I've been singing the game's praise. Why is it not my top 5? Well, difficulty. Not had the pleasure yet to play this against a human competitor, but the CPU is absolutely leathering me. The game is so difficult, the legendary N-level boss, the General, could not be defeated by the QA testers, and technically it went on location without the QA team actually beating the game. I believe they did patch it up before officially releasing it, and they even had a second sort of version, Dan Kuga, but that didn't actually get an official release, but it is used for tournament fighting today and has a bit of a cult following. It even made an appearance in an episode of High Score Go, and you can get some pretty cool t-shirts on Kumagumi if you like some merch. Actually, I'll include a link in the description below, including a link to a fantastic interview with the developer by Justin Wong. Such a shame this game didn't make it in the top 5, it's got so much charm. Another shocking absence from the top 5 is Bubble Memories, and to make the exclusion even more painful, this was actually one of my first F3 games, and it even came with my first candy cab, the Blast City. I really tried to get this one in the top 5, but it really couldn't stack up against the other games, and I tried to even lump it in with another game which is very similar. You'll know what I'm talking about later, but I didn't feel it was fair on the other game because it's so much better than this one. Really got a soft spot for the Bubble Bobble series, going back to the days of the Amiga where I actually had an original copy of the game, which is pretty rare because I didn't have that many original games back then. Yeah, so it really meant something to me, and I also have really fond memories. It's one of the few games that I used to play co-op with my sister, regularly used to beat it, really good times. Play-wise, it's your classic Bubble Bobble action, but they did introduce a new charged bubble attack, but I'm not particularly keen on it because it removes the need to do the bubble bouncing. Yeah, the bubble can go through walls, and the bubble bouncing was a key component of the original game. They did keep the boss fights from the previous game. Not everyone's cup of tea, but I do like them because it kind of breaks up the play a little bit. In typical Taito fashion, the sprite work is absolutely outstanding, incredibly detailed, bright colours. I love the little pickups, always the ice cream and donuts, always make me feel so hungry. But we've got to talk about the elephant in the room, the theme and the backgrounds. I really don't understand the thought process behind this because you've got these amazing sprite work, these cute little characters, so detailed, and then you've got these backgrounds with like some ugly pixelated frogs and some, I don't know, dinosaur fossils? What is going on? Don't worry, there's a much better version coming up that I alluded to, and it did make the top 5. Console wise, I'm not sure if this got a home port. It's possibly on one of the Taito Legends. Finally, we got a vertical shooter. We've got Grid Seeker. Apologies, during my long introduction, I forgot to mention that not all the games came in a cartridge form, so some of them actually came in a single PCB, so basically it's the motherboard and the game all in one. This is another new addition to my F3 setup, and it's a bit of an underrated game. Not that many people talk about it, maybe because the first impression you get is it's a really like simple sort of jet game, maybe like a poor man's Striking 1945 or something. But when you look at it more closely, there's some pretty cool mechanics going on. The game gives you the choice of 3 different ships. You've got your classical all-rounder, which is the Apache helicopter. You've got your very, very fast but not so powerful F-14, and you've got the extremely powerful but slow stealth bomber. And each of these ships, you've got these little pods at the front, very similar to something like X Multiplier, where you can hold down the button and then sort of adjust the position of these pods. And these pods really introduce a cool risk and reward element to the game because not only do they absorb bullets to protect your ship, but they also feed your power meter. And once your power meter is full, you get an additional super bomb. You can't pick up super bombs, so this is the only way to generate them. So you really find yourself searching out little bullets, putting yourself in harm's way just to get more super bombs. While I love the ideas introduced by the game, it's just other areas that just aren't to the same level. So the graphics, yes, they're pretty decent, some lovely parallax scrolling in there, but some of the boss battles, they just seem a little bit average, just needed a little bit more, and they could have been an amazing game, and it could have made it in the top 5. And talking about games that didn't quite make it into the top 5, this is the last one, and it's another vertical shooter, and it even has some Tower Plan DNA. So what am I playing at? Why the hell did this not make it into the top 5? Okay, as you probably know, the mighty Tower Plan went bankrupt around 1994, and their amazing staff got scattered around the place, some of them forming new companies like Cave and Rising. They kind of did okay, didn't they? And some of them formed a company called Takumi. Now the guys at Takumi actually took with them unfinished games from Tower Plan, and this is obviously Twin Cobra 2. So lucky for us, they managed to finish the game, and they got Taito to publish it for them. Anyone that's played Tiger Heli or the original Twin Cobra will feel really at home with this one. It's a natural evolution of those games. Nothing really that new. You've got 3 weapons. You've got your red Fang, which is your classic sort of Vulcan shot from Raiden. And then you've got the sort of blue shot, which is a kind of spread one. And the green one actually varies depending on which ship you've got, whether you're player 1 or player 2. So player 1, I think it's got sort of a rocket base attack, like a green claw. And the player 2 has this really powerful laser. Don't get me wrong, this is an absolutely fantastic game. It's just up against some real stiff competition, some great shooters in the top 5. I just feel that this is not quite a sort of classic sort of late Tower Plan game. Another one in the final 5, I do get that feeling. So that's probably the main reason. But I definitely recommend this game, and Takumi go on to make some amazing games like Gigawing and Mars Matrix. Don't forget there's an amazing port on the Saturn, but Japanese exclusive. Okay, we're officially in the top 5 now. Ranking begins. 5th place goes to Elevator Action 2. When considering which games actually made my top 5, one of the key factors was actually how often these games got pulled off my shelf, stuck in the arcade cab and played. So it's very easy to get carried away sometimes and think certain games are just technically good and I should put them in my top 5 for that reason. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure these games were ones that I replayed, I wanted to play because they are fun. The next game has got fun in spades. Now this is one game you see it on the shelf, it just calls out to you, especially if you've only got like 10 or 20 minutes. It's just a game you want to play. This, of course, is the unexpected sequel to the original legendary arcade game from 1983, Elevator Action, and it's got a bit of a cult following in Japan. It got re-released on the Nessica Live, so you can play on modern cabs. Pretty cool to see. But yeah, after 11 years, for a sequel, that's pretty surprising. While the two games do sort of share a basic concept, they couldn't be more different. While the first game is a sort of 60s, 70s classic spy movie, this one is more of a 90s action movie, typical sort of Jerry Bruckheimer wet dream, complete with over-the-top cutscenes, explosions, and cheeky one-liners. It's like they took the original, added a little bit of rolling thunder in there, made it more fun and fluid, and then just sprinkled a little bit of Metal Slug humor in there just for good measure. Like I mentioned before, the concept is very, very simple. Each mission is basically an in-out operation. You're going to go in there, find some documents or defuse some bombs. Along the way, you're going to pick up some extra ammunition for your secondary weapon, or even smash open some boxes to find some temporary weapons that will help you along the way. But in this game, it's not about the destination, it's all about the shenanigans you get up to along in the journey. It's about the attention to detail in the sprite work, it's about the humor in the characters, it's about the cutscenes, it's about the small little things you just don't notice until the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th, or even the 20th time you play the game. It's about the explosions, it's about the music, it's about the sound effects. It's everything just coming together in a cacophony of fun and enjoyment. Okay, there are a number of cutscenes and events that sort of trigger enemy patterns and attacks and waves of enemies, but generally when you go through the game, it does feel very random, so it has a lot of replay value to the game, especially if you're playing 2-player. Unfortunately, it was released during the 3D hype, so it never got picked up for the West. It remained in Japan on the Saturn. Your new is coming, 4th place, Bubble Symphony. Like I mentioned before, I tried to do a bit of a joint effort between this one and Memories, but I thought it's not really fair. This game needs to stand by itself. It deserves its spot. Putting it another way, if I got a bubble itch, there's only one game that's going to come off the shelf to scratch it, and it ain't Memories. This time around, they've added 2 more playable characters and even mixed things up a little bit by making each character feel a little bit differently by adjusting the speed or bubble power, and even the special attack slightly differs depending on which character you choose. I really like these additional characters. I have no idea why they decided to remove them in Bubble Memories. As you can imagine, there's not that much difference in the actual gameplay, but where this game is vastly superior to Bubble Memories is obviously the presentation and the theme of the game. While Bubble Memories went for really dull and uninteresting backgrounds and themes, instead Bubble Symphony has gone for really bright and colourful themes based on classic Taito arcade games, such as, yes, you got it, Kiki Kai Kai. I told you she's going to make an appearance in a number of games. I just love the fact that rather than going for some boring continuous levels, they've gone for the Rainbow Island approach of having distinct worlds, and of course each of these worlds is sort of based on a classic arcade game. This is truly Taito in its elements. Even the worlds have their own unique enemies based on the arcade game. For example, in Darius World, you've got cute little fish firing little rockets at you. This truly is a love letter to Taito's arcade past. As always, the game really keeps you busy with lots of secrets and goodies to collect. Depending how well you'll do, you'll get secret doors, and you need to pay attention to collect all the sheet music that will suddenly appear. Get 3 of a kind and you'll get a key. Collect all the keys and you'll get a good ending. Home console port-wise, this also unfortunately suffered from that 2D curse, and yes, Japanese-san exclusive. Okay, I think it's about time we got back some shooters, and we've got in third place Gakirindam. I'm sure there's a few people out there a little bit shocked I got this one as high on my list as I do, but this is another game with Toa Plan DNA in it. As I mentioned before, after the bankruptcy, a lot of the staff did go on to form new companies, but some of them went over and joined Taito. And what did they do? Well, one of the first games they did was a bit of a homage to some of the Toa Plan shooters of the past. I really enjoyed Twin Cobra 2 for what it is, but I just don't get that really special, magical feeling I get when playing a late Toa Plan game. But on the other hand, this one, I get that Toa Plan tingle. Okay, don't get me wrong, it's not perfect, but it's nowhere near as impressive as Batsugun or as good as, say, Tatsujin 2, but these are really high standards. I'd take a B-tier Toa Plan game any day. Gameplay-wise, they kept things nice and simple. There's no big gimmicks in the game. As with most of these shooters, you've got the choice of 3 different ships, each with their different strengths and weaknesses, and as expected, you get some power-ups along the way for your main weapon, and also you'll get a secondary weapon. Depending which one you pick up, is either going to be like a homing missile, or there's a little mini napalm one as well, which is pretty cool. By default, you do start off with a simple shot, which of course becomes more impressive the more power-ups you get, but you can change it. You can upgrade it to a sort of homing laser, very similar to Tatsujin, and the comparisons to Tatsujin don't stop there. You've also got a super bomb with a giant skull, so definitely a nod to Tatsujin there. The story has you chasing after the bad guy through time-traveling portals and actually fighting different periods of time, but there's only one level that's actually based in sort of current times, and that's actually probably the dullest level. Luckily they learned from this, and all the rest of the levels are actually set in more futuristic space settings, which really allow them to show off the hardware capability of the F3. Some really amazing graphics, some nice parallel scrolling, really a feast for the eyes, and also a feast for the ears. The soundtrack is absolutely outstanding, done by the in-house Taito band. As I mentioned before, the game is not perfect. The only issue I really have with it is probably the hit detection of your ship. There's time where there are some tight patterns of bullets, and you think you squeeze your way through, only to find yourself being taken out. So yes, it's not very forgiving, and you just wish it could have been a little bit tighter. But it's not a deal breaker. I still find myself coming back and playing and enjoying the game. Okay, maybe it's a little bit of a poor man's Tatsujin, but I don't care. I'm still going to play it, and I'm still going to play Tatsujin. So it did get a port to the Saturn only in Japan, but unfortunately it wasn't great, so maybe that's why it's a little bit underrated. Okay, things are getting serious now. We've got, in second place, RayForce. You can call it Gunlock, you can call it Galactic Attack, or RayForce, or Layer Section. Hell, you can even call it Maurice if you want. I don't care. I call it Masterpiece. Okay, I'm going to just shut up and allow Zantana to hold your hand through one of the greatest openings in video game history. So here we are with RayForce, the first in the Ray series, and for me, clearly the best. Okay, the second and third are pretty damn good games. They play and look reasonably well on the PlayStation, with the 3D-ish sort of graphics, but for me, you just can't beat those crisp, 2D, beautifully hand-drawn sprites. RayForce really showcases the F3's capabilities, using every trick it's got under its sleeve. The hardware's pushed so hard that you'll hear more snap, crackle and pop coming from the motherboard than a bowl of Rice Krispies. It's another game where every time you play it, you just notice something new. It's just so fast paced that you just don't appreciate or notice some of the amazing special effects in the background. It's only when you sort of play back the footage you appreciate how amazing it is. There may be some critics out there that may complain about the lack of power-ups and crazy outrageous weapons that blow up the whole screen, but the game just doesn't need it. It's so well balanced. The only way the game's experience gets even better is if you've got another player along with you for the ride. This is an absolute timeless classic, an absolute must in anybody's library, especially if you love your shooters, and it should be law that there should be a dedicated cab with this in it in every single arcade. Okay, so crazy rant over. It's safe to say I kind of like the game. It's kind of a good one. But it did come out on the Saturn as well, you know that already, and also I think the PlayStation 1. If you haven't got it already, go out and get it. What are you waiting for? There can only be one winner, and it's got to go to the greatest fishing game of all time, Darius Garden. This is another one I recently picked up, and probably the reason why I've done this video in the first place. It really reignited my passion over the F3. It's a game I've been after for many years. Ever since I got the F3, it's always been on my list of games that I wanted, and when I saw it on the sale on Suragaya, I had to grab it, especially because it was complete with the marquee and also the game instructions as well. As soon as I knew this was on the way, I had to pimp up my new Astro City and ordered a reproduction topper for it so I can really display my artwork properly, so I can really give this game some respect. This, of course, is just the vanilla version. There's also an extra version that was released in the arcades. I believe it was just a remix of some of the levels, and I think they played around with some of the difficulty levels. I never played it, but kind of tempted to give it a go. I've got a feeling after this video it's going to be another excuse to get the Darksoft multi. I think everyone's pretty much played a Darius game before, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but what I will do is go through the actual pickups and the upgrades, because you need to understand them, otherwise you're going to die pretty damn fast. Well, let's start off with the most important one, which is your main weapon or shot. Now this is actually upgraded by picking up the little red shields, and you'll notice straight away that as soon as you pick up one, your weapon will only become a little bit more powerful. Now to really see the differences, you want to pick up at least 3 shields, and then you'll be converted to a laser. And then after that, if you pick 3 more up, it's like a powerful wave, and 3 more, you get the ultimate weapon, which is a really high powered wave. So altogether you need about 14 shields, and then you become the mega fish killer, most powerful ship that you can be. Very similar to that, you have your secondary weapon or your little bomb drop. Now this is actually highlighted by a little missile that you'll see in the top left hand corner. Again, very similar. You've got to pick up little green shields, and every time you pick up a green shield, one of the yellow boxes on the top left hand side will fill up, and eventually you'll get up a level and it'll become more and more powerful. Of course you can pick up shield for your actual ship, and that is the little blue shields that you'll pick up, and that also has a little icon and becomes more powerful as you go along. That's the little green icon on the top left hand corner. So yes, it's all about picking up those shields, upgrading, getting more powerful, and not dying. So the one big recommendation I can give to you is just don't die. Because if you do, you actually decrease your level, you'll go down, become less powerful, and you will seriously struggle. Like me, if you die, you tend to chain die. You know, you lose that 1 life, and it's just game over. You just collapse like a house of cards. For me, this is not only the best game on the F3, but potentially is probably the greatest horizontal shooter of all time. It's certainly up there. I definitely prefer this one than G Darius. I don't really like the 3D graphics, as I probably said multiple times on multiple occasions, but this is an absolutely astounding game, and I haven't even got to the music yet. Yes, Tata have done it yet again. Incredible soundtrack by them. Maybe not everybody's favorite, but certainly one of the most iconic soundtracks in a video game. For me, it fits really well. I love the moodiness and hypnotic sort of sounds. It's sort of haunting to a certain degree. Absolutely love the soundtrack, fits the game so well. Kind of also reminds me of Fifth Element for some reason, but definitely incredible soundtrack. It's safe to say I've thoroughly been enjoying playing this one for the past couple of months now. It truly is an absolute honour and privilege to be able to play on actual arcade hardware, on a candy cab as well. Don't take that for granted. Definitely you get the opportunity in the arcade, give this one a go. I'm slowly getting better, slowly, very, very slowly. Love to be able to 1cc it, but I'm some way away from that. But someone that has really good 1cc runs is I'm Borderlands. So I've been watching his videos. He's done a number of 1cc's on this, multiple routes. I'm focusing on the top row, so as far as I've got now is the K-Boss. So I've got plenty of work still to do. But definitely, if you like your 1cc's, go and check him out. I'll put the link in the description below. Of course, this one had multiple console ports, so there's no excuse not to have this one in your library, especially if you've got a Saturn or PlayStation 1. Definitely make sure you have a copy. So there you have it. That's the Taito F3 and games that I've got for it. Hope you enjoyed that. Well, at the very least you got something out of the video. I certainly enjoyed making it. It was pretty good fun, actually playing the games and capturing footage. But thank you very much for making it to the end. Let me know in the comments as well if there's any games that I'm missing that should be in my top 10. Now maybe something like Lightbringer. I know a lot of people do like that game. It's probably give me more excuse to get the Darksoft multi. Who knows? May get it soon. May do an update. Who knows? Again, thank you for watching and take it easy, and I'll see you later.